Well, before we go to the post game, should we take a little bit of time to celebrate?
Yeah, let's do it. Let me pull up some of these.
So, folks should be well familiar with, if you're not, incredible turnout and a victory, very slim, but a victory nonetheless for Pedro Castillo in Peru, running a campaign that, in my opinion, was quite radical and inspiring. Not only because it was very much entrenched in a kind of anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist position, but that it very much invigorated rural working class people along with indigenous working class people against some of not only the most ghoulish right wing figures, Kiko Fujimori, obviously, but also a kind of international capital class that was trying everything that they could do to put their thumb on the scale, including pushing this really at this point. And I hope if people have spent any time watching videos on this channel, should consider at least now thoroughly debunked um, uh, smear campaign against Pedro Castillo that he is, representing some kind of, reactionary but pro-worker alliance. In fact, this has been something that has brought in people both from, the kind of forgotten indigenous and rural working class and social movements that are fighting for minority rights across the country of Peru. There's been a really incredible political coalition with its own contradictions and tensions. Don't get me wrong, but it's just been so maligned at this point that I almost have a hard time talking about the contradictions and tensions within it, because I just think there's been so much nonsense to one side about it that some people are having a hard time recognizing that it's a very, very good thing that a teacher who became famous because he led very, very influential teacher strikes, is now set to be the next president of Peru.
Yeah, let's play this celebration clip. Just, like, unbelievable that it was, and also I think let's just like count our blessings that it was so close that a guy like Pedro beating a Fujimori and it wasn't challenged in any serious way. Because I mean, that's what I
We'll
was.
see.
Well, yeah, I mean, at least so far, right? I was expecting. Has there been more
I mean,
talk
remember
about?
how quickly the Evo Morales stuff happened.
That's
I mean,
true.
that
Yeah.
happened way quicker than anything could come out of this. And
Yeah.
we'll get to some juicy stuff about his opponent soon too. That might be a big wrench in her plans to
Right.
try to undermine the reality of this election.
Here's the
This
celebration
video
here.
is great.
I love that. They make you can people see on the side the columns are made into pencils.
Pencil, man. Well, that's the thing is, like, I love this campaign so much, obviously, for who was being motivated and was, a part of this fight, but also this really great example of, how much it's important to have a little style. And I think
Yeah,
it was great, like the pencil.
I mean and that's just great communication because it's not only do you have the right vehicle for the communication, which is this emoji of a pencil that it can
Mhm.
click, but you have something that people want to fucking hear, which is that we're going to
Yeah.
rewrite the rules to society in a way that is actually not excluding you. And yeah, it's it's definitely like it's moved into the top tier emojis of all time, I think, because
And,
of the
we've
work.
done a bunch of videos on this, so I don't want to spend too much time repeating myself. But again, it's so funny to see right wing pundits making this complaint like, oh my God, he wants to be a dictator because he wants to rewrite the Constitution. Well, the fact that the dude's wandering around the country holding a big ass pencil saying, vote for me to rewrite the Constitution, you should recognize that that's actually, hey, you might disagree with that, but go to the ballot box. What do the people want? This was an election that had very high turnout, I believe 72% off of the top of my head. I was very, very happy to see DSA send a delegation there. Not only a delegation that was just there seeing what was happening, but was having serious talks with members of Peru Libre as well as Nuevo Peru, which is the other left-wing party that Pedro Castillo beat out in the initial elections, that ended up joining up with him. This was an incredible political coalition, not just because it looks like it's defeated the right wing, but because it brought in rural Peruvians who have very, very much been left out. A lot of people going into this election thought that Veronica Mendoza was going to be the candidate of the left in the second round. And I'm not even trying to sit here and dog on her in that movement or anything like that, but they didn't come close. But this was also a movement that's very much seen as being a part of the cities, was being a little bit more interested in presenting a kind of cosmopolitan view rather than a class warfare view. Mendoza herself distanced herself from the other left movements in the region, right? While Castillo, in many ways, not always in a full-throated way, but stood with him. And this is why Evo Morales says after the first round of the election that Pedro Castillo went on our platform. Not that Evo was taking credit for me, saying this is a brother, this is a sister movement of what we're doing with Moss. And it's absolutely is an exciting move because not only is there a talk and the slogan is no poor people in a rich country, which I love. It harkens back to a Michael Parenti line that I love so much, which is like there aren't rich countries and poor countries. There are poor people and rich people. But it's also very much a campaign that was targeted on a few things, which was fighting for a break of imperialism. So having national sovereignty, against United States meddling, as well as using the vast resources of the country and the economic activity in the country to benefit Peruvians, rather than international corporations that have been extracting wealth for decades upon decades.
Yeah, I'm looking for this tweet by I believe a Peruvian leftist I just followed at Rockadamus, but I can't find it. But the tweet was something to the effect of the lawyers in Lima are upset that people in the rural hinterlands or whatever, their votes count the same amount. And I mean, I do think like we're in a moment where, and I've felt this way for a while, like the idea that we have to argue to get the government to intervene in the economy isn't really, like, that's not an argument anymore, right? Especially post-COVID, like the government has to fucking do it. And even before COVID, they're escaping the bottom of a barrel. But getting it to do so democratically is the major challenge. And you can look across the world and everyone wants to try basically limit that as much as possible. Especially, I mean, you look domestically here.
No, that's that's a phenomenal point. And I want to continue celebrating, but I also just want to give some people, some cold hard, facts, or just a little dose of reality. Don't wipe the smile off your face or anything like that. It's going to be a hard slog, and who knows what this coalition is going to mean in power. They're not coming into power with, a commanding control of all the other avenues of government. And as people who are, fans of this channel, are also people who study the work of Leo Panitch, or fuck's sake, Lenin or Marx, or any real serious socialist thinker, need to understand that, building an alternative to capitalism isn't so much as like just sometimes winning an election. It's an extremely difficult process. It's something that's very possible, but it requires a not only popular program that gets people to vote for you, but mobilizing the vast power that we have as a working class, right? And that's one of the things that they're trying to build in Bolivia, that Lula's, at times has tried to build in Brazil. Is what I'm trying to say is like nothing's going to happen overnight, and there are no promises even that winning an election is going to result in what we want to happen. But obviously, these are the first steps to doing anything. And we should be able to celebrate them and hope that these political coalitions go from just being class focused to, my favorite term, class rooted.
Yeah, and on that note, I just want to say, circle back to our conversation with Kurt Hackbarth, and the role of like just public financing of elections. And when he talks about this stuff, like, and obviously people get too limited about these electoral fixes, right? Like the ranked choice voting hasn't done wonders for the New York mayoral race, right? Obviously there there are limits, but it's just interesting, like to see like, oh, actually this can lead to a little bit of traction, is kind of interesting. But on that note, I think
our 1, 2, 3.
our 1, 2, 3.
Oh, because we have these little links here that I think are worth bringing up.
Oh, I got a couple. So I got which ones do we want open?
Unless you had something else, I just want to make sure we don't miss this good build up because I think it's very fun.
Are you talking about Bloomberg and The Economist?
Yeah,
and
yeah,
stuff?
the ones that I have in the show
Gotcha.
notes.
Yep.
So I just want to take us through a little bit of a rogues gallery, maybe a little bit of a less official bum steer of the week of the freakouts that we've seen from Western English press over Pedro Castillo's victory. And we won't spend too much time on them. I just think going through the opening lines is worthwhile. So if I'm not able to see them, you might have to read them out. But let me know.
Okay, yeah, this is the Bloomberg one. Peru offers a taste of what COVID can do to politics. A left-wing candidate appears to have squeaked through. They always will emphasize that, especially if it's a left-winger and they can't, get the OAS to come in. Rattling miners and other investors. What do they mean by that?
We'll get to the miners in a second.
Okay.
We'll go to these other two.
Then we got Reuters analysis. Peru.
Well, we gotta go to the Economist first.
Okay, sorry.
Reuters is the last one.
Okay, this is The Economist. A failure to reform Peru is poised to produce a lurch to the far left. A presidential runoff election is set to deliver a weak populist government. And then now we'll go to The Economist, or the Reuters here. Analysis. Peru markets and miners fear Castillo, see silver lining in split vote.
So Reuters is asking the question, who will think of the miners, right? And if you go to this last bit, Matt, number 4 is a graphic from Copper Action, which is a group that stands for people who work in the copper industry, the actual workers. And it actually has a map.
Right.
If you scroll down to who voted for Pedro Castillo versus who voted for Kiko.
Oh my God.
And it's pretty exceptional here, where it's 92% versus 8%. So when you're asking the question of who will think of the miners, it's very clear that is Pedro Castillo, despite the fact that Kiko actually had a plan that was set up to essentially provide payments to people in those communities, small payments, it should be stated. And you know what people decided that they preferred over just getting a small subsidy from the state? They preferred to have workers emboldened. They preferred to have more worker control of these industries and to wrestle these things away from their opponents rather than just get a small amount of money from the state.
Damn, that is some fuckery by Fujimori's. Because all that is a play to try to cut the margins. But motherfucker, you still lost 92 to 8%. That did not work. That was money just thrown out.
I just love the audacity of publications like Reuters saying, well, the miners are worried. You're not talking about miners. You know what I'm talking? Like, you're talking about like corporations headquartered in New York City or London, who are worried about their profit margin on copper. And for people who aren't familiar, Peru produces the right word. Peru has incredible copper wealth that is extracted. I believe it's the second largest copper exporter in the world, and obviously copper is used for a lot of things today. So it is something that global capital pays attention to. So it's very funny to hear them talk about the miners, which gives you a kind of hard hat image.
Let us go dig more silver
Instead
for
of
these
some
corporations.
fat fuck in Hoboken, hoping that he can cash in more money from his dividends. And just last but not least, and I hope people recognize that Matt and I are celebrating this victory because it is a good thing. Kiko has been very, very loudly challenging the results of this election, much like her, favorite person, Donald Trump, with very, very little evidence. And I wish I had it before. It's very funny actually to see some of the the ballots that they're claiming were fraudulent,
Oh yeah.
were spoiled. One of my favorite ones, and maybe I'll find it later, but one of my favorite ones, basically on their ballot, they have the party logo, the picture of the candidate, right? And over Pedro Castillo is a very clear X, like I'm voting for him. And then over the picture of Kiko, somebody drew jail bars, like lock her up.
That honestly, if your democracy doesn't allow that, you don't have a democracy.
Yeah, exactly.
Because like Kiko Fujimori is exactly who we should be locking up. I'm putting this story up right now.
Yes, and it looks like that might very likely become the case soon.
Lock her up. Prosecutor requests prison time for Peru presidential candidate Kiko Fujimori. The lead prosecutor in an ongoing Peruvian corruption case urged a judge Thursday to send presidential candidate Kiko Fujimori. I can't.
You didn't have many Kikos up in North Dakota, man?
No, it didn't. Back to preventive prison in connection with an ongoing corruption case, even as votes continues to be tallied. Fujimori has dismissed this request as absurd. The prosecutor knows where I live. I'm not going to flee. That's okay. I mean, I would just say lock her up. That's my comment.
I think that's very fair. And also, just for anybody who thinks there's any hypocrisy here, what she is being investigated for is a bribery scheme of somewhere between, I believe, $15 million to $17 million. Where when we were talking about Lula, I don't even want to bring this up, but I just have to remind people because he's been proven innocent on all charges.
Right.
But what they tried to throw him in prison for was that Lula allegedly had an apartment that somebody renovated the bathroom of the apartment for a little bit cheaper than market price.
I love that bathroom.
So again, that didn't happen, right? But what we're also saying is like that compared to any other version of like a corruption scandal is just absurd. And it was amazing how often that got ignored, that like the actual charges against Lula were so honestly hilarious. Like if you're going to be the president of a country like Brazil and like that's the corruption that you're getting, is you're just getting cheap work done on your apartment at a beach, which apparently isn't even one of the nicer beaches in Brazil.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, like the apartment, like in exchange for, as a politician, having policies that lead to nutritional benefit to population on a mass level, I think he might be inclined to or entitled to a fucking apartment. And even if it was 17 million, I'd be like, well, you got to weigh the good with the bad. This is a Fujimori promising rule of order and saying my dad did nothing wrong, and also doing again, like you say, and it needs to be part of stress, Lula's not guilty. But even if he was, just vast majority, just to pay, just an ocean liner compared to a fishing boat. Yeah. So anyways. Yeah, lock her up, baby. It's so fun to say that.